Hello there, this is Ajit. In today's video, we are talking about how to help your clients set better boundaries. How to help your clients really have any boundaries. If you're a life coach, a business coach, a spiritual life coach, or a health coach, you would love this particular video because one of the key reasons why very often we find our clients not being able to adhere to what they commit to is because they have poor boundaries. So today, we are talking about how to help your clients really have better boundaries in different areas of their life. Now, before even we get started, let's understand what boundaries mean in the context of this video. In the context of this video, I am purely addressing boundaries as things that we are not okay with. I tend to separate boundaries and agreements just for the sake of boundaries are things that we are not okay with. Agreements are things that we agree to that will be okay with or are expected of, right? So for the sake of this video, we're going to use boundaries exclusively as things that we're not comfortable with. To learn how to set better boundaries would mean how to set better outlines or permissions, if I may, for individuals to feel comfortable in different scenarios. There are three primary areas that you need to work with your clients to have them have better boundaries. The first area is the most ignored one, and that is having clear boundaries with yourself. You see, we as individuals live so much on autopilot. We are so unconscious of so many things that are happening around us that we forget when we are being violated by ourselves or our boundaries are being violated by ourselves. How many times have we found ourselves months, years into a bad behavior that is hurtful to us, but we continuously still pursue that behavior? How many of us have felt that our friends walk all over us and we don't really set a clear boundary for ourselves to say, I don't want to be walked all over by my friends? How many times has it happened to us where we say, okay, I'm not going to eat this particular thing for this much time, but we have found ourselves doing the same thing? Haven't we all at one point said, damn the Thanksgiving dinner, I'm not going to overeat this time? And then we end up in the same situation the next year, and the year after, and the year after. How many times have we violated our own boundary of what we are not comfortable with when we know the consequence of that particular act? And that is why today we are at a situation where we have a global pandemic of obesity, diabetes, and overeating of sugar. We need to set clear boundaries for ourselves and then follow through on it. When we don't follow through on our boundaries, we train our mind that it's okay to violate our boundaries and we get back into the same rhythm. We are going to talk about a model that you can show your clients to have better boundaries with themselves. And as they define those boundaries, this model should also help them keep these boundaries in check. You see, the easy part of boundaries with ourselves is we are the only ones who know the complete truth, which means when we violate a boundary, when we don't respect what we set ourselves up to do, boundaries with ourselves are the hardest one to monitor because the only person that can keep us accountable to that is ourselves. If you set a boundary with yourself and you violate it, nobody else is going to come chasing, nobody else is going to come remind, but you have to remind yourself that you violated the boundary. And you can't let that happen again and again because sooner or later it'll become unconscious behavior again and you'll be back at the place where you once started. So it's important to understand how to know what is it that you need to set a boundary on, how to set that boundary, and how to follow through on it. The second kind of boundary is boundaries with family. When I say family, I include parents, I mean kids, I mean partners, with friends, and so on and so forth. Boundaries with family is very important. This is the second type of boundary that we let go of very easily. How often do we let our friends walk all over us? Or how often is it that our partner gets to do the same thing that they agreed to not do previously and we completely ignore it? They violate our boundaries and we think, well, they will probably learn the next time. How often does that happen in our clients' lives where their family, immediate family, just because they don't want to change their nature, walk over their boundaries? You see, if we let our family members violate our boundaries once, they feel and they create this inherent belief that if they try hard enough, you will give up. If they pursue the direction that is comfortable for them, you will give up. It's not that they want you to give up. They love you, but it's uncomfortable for them to change. And because it's uncomfortable for us to change, and it's easy to stay in the same pattern as they've lived forever and ever and ever, they find it much easier to walk over your boundary than to have you set up a clear boundary and then have them follow it. So it's important for us to help our clients define clear family boundaries if we want them to live their most epic life. And lastly, the boundary that I want to talk about is the boundaries in career. One of the areas that people don't feel entitled to have boundaries is their career. The reason why we don't feel like we should have boundaries or we could have boundaries is because we believe that, well, we have a boss, we have somebody who's a colleague. How could we have a boundary there? They will get offended. You could get fired. You could lose a promotion that you're due for, and so on and so forth. And so it becomes really difficult for us to say, okay, I'm going to have a boundary in my career, or I'm going to have a boundary with my boss, or I'm going to have a boundary with a colleague. And so we don't actually set those boundaries up. And because we don't set those boundaries up, we are constantly being attacked in our safe space. If there is a colleague that feels a little creepy to you, or feels like it's somebody that is not giving you any personal space because they want to be friends, or they just want to hang out because they are uncomfortable with their own being, and you're not able to clearly define that boundary and not able to draw that line, the only person getting violated in that relationship is you. The only person that is getting violated or their boundaries getting violated is you. They, on the other hand, are living a perfectly comfortable life. They are living exactly as they want to. It is a popular understanding that boundaries are uncomfortable, that boundaries restrict somebody, and boundaries are not an expression of love. And I want to reframe that for you and potentially for your clients as well. You see, when somebody owns their boundaries, when you know, this is my boundaries, these are my space for my career, for my family, and for myself, it's an expression of self-love. It's an expression of love towards people that they associate with. It's an expression of love towards the job. And here is why. If you have a really good boundary towards yourself, you are expressing to yourself that I am comfortable and uncomfortable in these areas, and I'm going to honor myself and only do things that I'm comfortable with. I am only going to do things that I feel are an expression of love to myself. When you define a boundary for yourself, you are expressing love to your being. And so it is not you creating a restriction in your life. It's actually creating a permission in your life to fully love yourself by identifying what is it that you're okay and not okay with. Secondly, when you identify a boundary with your friends and your family, it's not that you're withholding love. You're actually showing them how to love you better. It is same as, for example, when you share with someone who is a loved one, a family member, a friend, a lover, a partner, a kid, a child, parent, and you tell them, hey, here is how you show love to me. Here is what my boundaries are, and here is how, if you will show love to me, I would really feel the true and honest love of yours. I understand how is it that you like to express love, but I receive love differently. Would you be open to that conversation? When you are able to clearly define that, it makes it easier for your parent, for your kids, for your lovers, for your friends to really express their love in the most amazing way possible. The only thing that needs to be understood is how you communicate this boundary so they don't feel that you are restricting love from them or taking your love away from them or taking their power to give you love. But how you communicate will actually help them understand how to really express love towards you. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. And lastly, when you have clear boundaries and workplace, it actually makes you more productive. Just imagine if you're somebody who likes to take a break during lunchtime and have quiet time and not engage in a social conversation because, well, maybe you do very heady work, or you just like that space for yourself, and when you go back, it increases your productivity. If you can create better outcomes in your workplace, you will be considered for the next raise. You will be considered as the best employee. You will be considered as somebody that people want more and more of because you're a high performer. When you set clear boundaries, when somebody is approaching you in a way that is not acceptable to you, or somebody is trying to walk all over you or all over your space, when you define that boundary, when you establish that this is okay and this is not okay, it actually tells them that they can't walk all over you, that you're a person of your own right, that you're not going to let somebody take over. And when you do that and demonstrate that in the workplace, you're more likely to be seen as a leader then seen as somebody who is not comfortable to work with. Having these clear boundaries help you show up a lot more authentically in all areas of your life, which helps you live the person that you truly are. So, how does one set up boundaries? How do we help our clients set up these boundaries? Well, there's a 4-part process that you want to follow to set up boundaries with anyone, or set up boundaries for yourself, set up boundaries for an external person, set up boundaries in your workplace, whatever that may be. There are just 4 simple steps. Here they are. The first step is to identify an old boundary or a lack of boundary. You see, there will be areas in your life that as I'm saying this is occurring to you, yep, I feel like I don't have any boundaries in this area, or I feel like I have let the other person just do whatever they want to, and I've been more reactive, and I haven't really defined how A, B, C should happen in my life. And that is an old boundary. And that is a place where maybe there is no boundaries whatsoever. And now, because that came to your mind and will come to your client's mind, you know that that's the area that's uncomfortable. That's the area where you're not comfortable with the way life is shaping up. It could be how you treat yourself. It could be how somebody treats you. It could be your workplace. It could be anything. But that's the area you're unhappy with, is the area where you would have an old boundary or you don't have a boundary. And hence, it's everybody else's agenda that becomes the agenda. And hence, of course, you're dissatisfied in that scenario. Even if you're pleasing everybody, even if your people pleaser is getting satisfied, you as a human being are not getting satisfied. Same is for yourself. If you're unhappy with yourself in a particular area, that is probably because you have poor boundaries or no boundaries whatsoever in that area of your life. So first step is to identify the area, is identify what are the old boundaries or no boundaries whatsoever in what area of your life. The second step is to define these boundaries. What is it that is the most ideal situation for you to have in this conversation, in this particular relationship that you have with someone or with yourself? Identify that and write it down as to what is it that's okay. Don't write it in context of what's not okay, which has happened in the past, because sometimes that would become a boundary that will, when communicated, feel like a response to something they did versus an internal experience of what you want in your own life. So it's important, the distinction. The distinction is, don't worry so much about what you don't want. Write down what you do want. Because when you write down what you do want as a set of boundaries, it will automatically become a little bit more communicative, because it will be driven from inside out and not outside in. You won't be reacting to what shows up. You will be responding to your inner compass. Once you have identified what your 4, 5, or 6 clear boundaries are in that area, communicate it. Now, communicating something responsibly in a way where somebody feels not threatened but actually affectionate about that boundary is very key and very important. You don't want to set a boundary which sounds like a rule of law. You want to set a boundary which is in collaboration with the person that you're talking to. You may want to share with your client how to communicate boundaries more effectively to their colleagues or their family members or to themselves, which may be done through kinder words. For example, you may be setting boundaries in your career and you may be sitting down with your boss, and it may sound something like this. Hi, boss. I have been thinking about how can I be a better performer at work. I want to take more responsibility of my personal performance. And one of the journeys that I have to take for that is to set up clear boundaries on how I interact with the rest of the world. One of the things that I wanted to do was to set up a clear method of us working together. Would you be open to hearing out what I have to say on how I think I can be more effective for you? You see, as I said this, I've got the buy-in from the boss to say, okay, I would love for you to be more effective. Every boss wants that. And so the boss goes, okay, sure, tell me how can we be more effective? And now you lay the boundaries out in a way where your boss feels like that it's a collaborative approach that we have taken towards creating these boundaries. For example, you may say, I would love for me to have some space in the afternoon because I know when I reflect and meditate for just 20 minutes, I become more productive right after that. Would you be open if I took my lunchtime exclusively for myself and took my time to be able to meditate, reflect on the previous half of the day, reflect on the next half of the day so I can be more effective in the remaining part of the day? It's a generous request that I am sure your boss will agree to. You are having a clear boundary between you and them so they understand how you become more effective by simply following a simple rule of not approaching you during lunchtime, because that's the time you take lunch, reflect, and become more effective for the rest of the day. You can follow this on once they've agreed with some more clear directives, like, for example, hey, This would mean that during lunchtime, I'm going to turn my phone off, which means I may not respond to you immediately. I will respond to you when I'm back at my desk. I would be more productive and effective, like I already talked about. And if there was ever an emergency, I'll be at the cafeteria. This way, your boss knows that in the worst case scenario, you're going to respond by lunchtime. And if it really is an emergency, if you were a doctor or a hospital worker in some way, they will come to you in the cafeteria. This way, you've defined really clear boundaries and you've communicated in a way where the person does not see it as a threat or restriction, but the person sees it as something that you're collaborating on so you could have more effective systems for work. That brings me to the last step of creating great boundaries, and that is to set up consequences. Consequences are where you communicate that if we violate boundaries, what would happen? Because sometimes, knowingly, unknowingly, consciously, unconsciously, the person that you're setting the boundary with, especially when they're outside of you, are not aware how much impact that boundary is having on you. They will go back to their old style, their old rhythm, and they will like to do that. Not because they want to violate your boundaries, but because that's more comfortable for them. And because they would want to do that, they need to understand that every time they do that, they will be violating your boundary and it will have its own set of consequences. So let's go back to the example of you talking to your boss where you've set some clear boundaries and your boss forgets about it, say 2 weeks later, and starts calling you in the middle of the day when you take your meditation break or your break for pause. What may happen is you may go back to your boss and say, hey, listen, 2 weeks ago we talked about that I need XYZ space because I need to be more effective and productive. And as you may have already experienced, having that space has increased my productivity in the last 2 weeks. I saw that today you rang me in the middle of that meditation, which broke my flow. As a consequence, currently, I feel antsy. I don't feel that I'm fully aligned. I don't know what my next area of work is. Would you be open to discussing how I could help you understand how important this is to me? Now, in a work situation, especially talking to your boss, you may have to work around your language a little bit. But if this was your life partner, if this was your kids, if this was your parents, if this was you yourself and setting a boundary for yourself, you could be a lot more stern. You could have real consequences like, I am going to walk away if you're going to talk to me in a particular way. I am going to go and take a day at the hotel because you're violating my boundary and I wouldn't want to be around you. Those are more extreme cases because usually boundaries in family and for ourselves is also a lot more extreme. They're violated more often, more frequently, and each of their violation lands a lot more harder on us because this is our family and our personal self. So you could be a little bit more stern inside a family environment, inside your own personal environment for yourself. But in the career setting, you might want to find a roundabout way to say the same thing, but still demonstrate that there will be consequences if your boss or your colleagues don't respect your boundaries. So we talked about 3 kinds of boundaries. We talked about boundaries for yourself. We talked about boundaries with your family and boundaries with your career. And then we talked about 4 simple steps that you can use to set up boundaries and your clients can use to set up boundaries. Step 1 is to firstly understand what are your old boundaries or lack of boundaries. Step 2 is to identify your real boundaries. Step 3 is to communicate it effectively. And step 4 is to set up consequences in case those boundaries are violated. As a life coach, as a spiritual life coach, as a business coach, as a health coach, you will see that you'll be working with boundaries pretty often because if nowhere else, boundaries get violated within ourselves all the time. And as we get better at it, we find more areas of our life where we have not practiced great boundaries. So it's important for you to remind your client and work with them every once in a while to set some great boundaries, set up a process to actually follow through on those boundaries, and set up consequences to make sure that those boundaries are getting followed. Have you struggled with boundaries yourself? Have you worked with clients on boundaries? If the answer is yes, I would love to know a little bit more about that in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your own personal journey with your boundaries or some of the ideas that you may have picked from this video. If you like what I talked about today, hit the like button, share it with a friend that can use this information. Hit the red subscribe button if you haven't yet so you can get a notification every single time we release a new video for you every single week. Thank you so much for watching. This is Ajit Navlakha and you're watching this on EverCoach.